Good evening and welcome to the latest interview in ACS's Industry Insights Leaders series, featuring Australian tech professionals who share their expertise on how technology and innovation transforms and shapes our economy. My name is Daniel Rayhanner, Chief Operations Officer at the ACS, and I'll be your host this evening. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the lands on which we meet today, and to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Tonight our guest is Wayne Baskin, Deputy CEO and CTO at Booktopia. Welcome, Wayne.
Thanks for having me.
Wayne started as Booktopia's first developer in 2008, and in that time Wayne has been responsible for the technical development of a range of their products and tool sets, such as implementation of the business's pricing and inventory algorithms through to strategy and planning roles. This evening we'll be taking questions from our audience, so please use the question function at the top of the page to submit these, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. Welcome to our ACS members. Thank you for dialing in tonight, and welcome Wayne. Let's get started.
Awesome.
So starting out, give us a bit of a rundown on your career, coming from GE Finance to being Booktopia's first engineer and progressing through to be the Deputy CEO and CTO. You've had a fascinating career. Could you share that journey with us?
Sure, yes, 2008 you said in Booktopia, that's a long time ago, but yeah, I was a software engineer, UNSW. I was working part-time, looking for my next role and looking to do some work. And one of the guys that I was at university with said, "Do you want a job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Where do you work?" And he said, "GE Finance." Now, a bit naive, didn't know GE was the world's biggest company at the time and didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So went off for an interview, sat in a room, still didn't know what I was being interviewed for. Got asked a few SQL join queries, you know, what's a left join, a right join, an outer join, you know, all those fun queries, and I think I nailed them. And they said, "All right, tell us a bit about you." "Well, I'm at university, I'm a software engineer." "Okay, cool, you got the job." I said, "What job?" They said, "Oh, no, you're going to come work at GE and you're going to work in our data warehouse team." I was like, "Oh, all right, sounds cool." So off I went, got the job, started there. They didn't have space for me where their desks were. And so they put me out, actually had a great view. I was sitting in North Sydney, had a view of the Harbour Bridge, perfect, uninterrupted view. Didn't realise because I had such a good view, I was actually sitting next to all the C-levels of GE Commercial. And I'm sitting there day 2, day 3, don't really know what I'm doing there. And I overhear a conversation between two of the C-levels. I didn't realise who they were, mentioning something, how are they going to solve a problem? And I stuck my head over and said, "I can do that." They said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Wayne." And they said, "What do you do here?" I go, "Don't really know yet. I've been hired and I don't know what I'm doing." And they said, "You think you can solve this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "All right, cool. Come help us." So I went, helped them solve the problem. Didn't really know what I was doing. Stuck my neck out, and I found I could work my way through things and built them a system. And next minute I knew I'd changed teams. I was no longer in the data warehouse team. I was now the software engineer at GE Commercial Finance. So I went on there for 4 years, and the way I kind of like to say is like anything that was over $10 million they would outsource and spend way too much money on, and anything under would come to me. I wish I got paid $10 million, but I would implement and take it all the way from business requirements through to implementation, testing, training, and then deploying into a live production environment, and then handing over support to another team. So I was very lucky. I got the full scope of the project management, and I was there, I was enjoying myself. I thought I was on a good salary at the time, I'm at university and here I am at GE Commercial Finance. And then I knew there was these guys and they were working on this project called Booktopia. And I knew them from other, other areas and my friends and acquaintances. And I said, they told me, we're building an online bookstore. And I said, "Are you crazy? Have you heard of a company named, Amazon?" And they laughed at me and, yeah, we know, but it's a side project, it's a marketing project, we'll be fine. Anyway, they came back to me a year later and said, "Do you know anyone that can, knows Java? We got JBoss servers, SQL, you used to work across the whole scope." And I was like, "Yeah, look, I can do that." And they were like, "Cool, come on in, let's have an interview." And I really wasn't interested. I was happy where I was. It was easy, get there at 9, leave at 5, corporate drinks on Fridays, no after hours work or anything like that. Anyway, we had a good negotiation, a good discussion, and I saw the opportunity there. And I took the leap and I became the first in-house engineer at Booktopia. At the time, Booktopia kind of was just a marketing arm. So there was this third-party company, they were a white-labeled solution, and they were kind of, just feeding traffic to this white-labeled solution, and the third-party company would take care of marketing, customer service, distribution, the website. And as I was joining, the reason they needed me was they were going out on their own, and we needed to build all the systems. And from there, not to spend too much time on it, but I've built all the systems there and over the years. So the website, the warehouse management systems, you mentioned the stock and pricing algorithms and all the algorithms that run the business, all the back-end jobs that run the business, and content management, order management systems, and the list goes on. And if I think about it, and progressed from there to become, to build a team underneath me. I think I hired my first engineer underneath me probably 4 years in, 4 or 5 years in, and then from there I've grown and become the CTO, and recently, probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, deputy CEO with a team in tech of about 30 in tech. But I sit now across strategy, I sit across operations, so all distribution center, customer service, customer experience, those strategy and analysis and data warehousing. So in all, about 200 to 250 people indirectly report into me there now. So
From your first hire 4 years into a team of over 200.
yeah, it's and with 2 companies under my belt, which is kind of rare. I think in this day and age, people tend to move around pretty rapidly, and I've stayed there for 12 years now. So enjoy it, love it.
Excellent. And so going from a white label product or solution through to bringing all the IP in-house, building yourself. The team was yourself, I'm gathering?
Yep.
So where do you start?
Where do you start? Look, I think we knew we needed a website. And I actually came in and they'd already selected a framework to use. So I was lucky in that sense, and I looked at the framework and looked at what was going on, and the website was up and running, but it just wasn't performing like it should, and really got stuck in and changed it, and you wouldn't recognize it today from what it was back in those days. But the interesting part is people look at me and go, you built your own warehouse management system, and today, like, there's you can go to the shelf and you can pull off 100 different solutions and have a look, and from there I looked and said, well, if I had the same thing today, I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't have built my own. Probably would have. But the thing is, I saw a need. I went out to the dock. They were receiving books in. Books were coming in, and they were unpacking the books. And they would look at the invoice, and they had a highlighter. A green highlighter meant the book was there. A pink highlighter meant it wasn't there. And a yellow highlighter meant it was damaged. And these guys were sitting there looking the book up and with highlights. And I said, why don't we just scan those into a system? They've all got barcodes on them. Let's just scan them into a system. And so we started scanning them into a system, and then they said, we get this digital file, we don't know what to do with it, but we're getting this digital file of the books that are supposed to be here. And so I said, well, if we just match what you scanned to what you didn't scan, there we've got an unpack report. And that formed the foundations of where we are today, and our automation, this massive warehouse management system that runs all our automation distribution center, 13,000 square meters of facility. It all came off this one, highlighted system.
So all in your head though. So take us through through in a bit more depth that digital transformation journey, starting with the website, and then sort of how you built out the team and the digital maturity of that team, and what the culture has now become with a team of over 200 people. Yeah.
So look, it started with just plugging needs. That's what it really was. The website was up and running. Great. Let's move on to the next need. All right. We need to find more efficient ways to do things, and it was always about finding more efficient ways to do things. When we were first selling books, they had a system there what was meant for a bookstore. So it was meant for a store. So we had someone whose job was to tender the cash. So they would just push a button, and they would sit there all day and push a button, which just, as an order came through, they would check the order and push a button, which was tendering the cash, which would then make a back order, which would then go into the system, which would then order it from, manually from the supplier, and would come in, and then they would highlight it. So it was always just looking for those needs in the business to make it more efficient. I think one of the key things that we did was we spent time in the business. Come Christmas, I was there with some of the co-founders, and at 4 a.m. we were sitting there using the systems, and we would be brainstorming and be sitting there going, why do I have to hit enter every single time a book comes up? I know that it's gift wrapping. Why am I pushing this enter button? And so I'd go away, I'd change that. The next night we'd be there, and we'd be, double as efficient. And the thing that always sticks with me is like, we're in a business, we're doing, we're shipping out at the moment around 30,000 units a day. If I can save 1 second, 2 seconds per unit, that's a lot of seconds that I'm saving in time, a lot of efficiency. So my mentality was always fix one thing at a time, and it was always don't try fix everything. It was always in phased implementation. So, you look at one thing, you fix it. Well, it'd be great if it did all of this. Okay, how do we chunk that down so we get immediate benefit from it now? And if we're making mistakes, we learn from our mistakes really quickly. We fail really quickly, understand it, and then iterate and make it better. And from there, it was building the systems. I realized I couldn't do it alone. Had to hire someone, so hired my first developer. He's still with the business today, so we have a great tenure at the business. People stay on quite a while. And from there, just built on and just hired more engineers as I need them, as I needed them, or as we needed them as a team, because the business was becoming more demanding. And built out the team it is today. And then, being a technologist in a technology company, it was very interesting. In the early days, we would call ourselves a technology company that happened to sell books. We then became a logistics technology-enabled company that happened to sell books. Today, we're Australia's largest bookstore. It's a big claim, I know, but I believe we're there. No one really knows, but I'll take that. So we are a bookstore in our own right, but it's at the core is our technology, and at the core is our logistics. And that being there, the CTO of the company, the person who knows all the systems, knows most about the company. And so naturally, when people were talking about marketing, I was involved in the conversation. When people were talking about customer experience, customer service, I was involved in the conversation. Operations, distribution center, finances, integrations with finance systems, where it became logical that, I was sitting with the CEO, and the CEO would look at me and say, you know more about what's happening operationally and what's happening in this company than anyone else here. And so that natural progression was for me to step into a deputy CEO, a co-CEO kind of role, where I look after all of these, operational areas as well as the strategy and the technology.
So a lot of our members may have had a similar type of career story and journey, being those initial founders and really understanding the granular detail of the business. But it seems really linear for you in a lot of ways, and you started building the processes through finding problems and solving them. At what point, after that first 4 years and your first hire, did you realise, well, to make this what we hope it will be, we really need to start plugging some holes, and we're going to need these type of people with these type of skills to be able to achieve that?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I think that was about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, very recent, where we actually started looking at what skills are we short in. Up until then, it was like, let's just deal with the growth. Let's sell more books so we can, get more growth. Sell more books so we can get more growth. Sell more books so we can get more growth. And so it's always been about looking for the holes and plugging the holes in the systems and in the processes more than what we need. Yep. Today it's about looking. We just hired our head of BI, last week. Yeah. Until then, I had someone from my finance team acting as a pseudo head of reporting. She'd never done that before. She did an amazing job. And she had a data warehouse engineer under her and a crystal reports engineer under her. They reported into IT, but they kind of worked with her. And eventually we looked around and said, hold on, we're missing a key person here, the head of BI. It's been similar in other areas of our business, where only in the last few years have we looked and grown as an organization to say, we're missing these skill sets, and we can see we're missing them. We're fortunate enough to be able to find and get that talent into the business. But up until probably 4 years ago, it was just a natural growth story, which came with its challenges.
Yep.
It definitely came with its challenges in that you're growing naturally, which is great. Everyone's going up in their career. Everyone's taking on better roles. But you get to a point where that natural growth in career doesn't happen. And how does that affect the culture of your business as well? So and that's where that kind of we flicked the switch and said, you know what? We can't keep growing people. We need to bring in talent.
Thank you. And at heart, Booktopia is a high growth company. What's your stance on that fail fast model that's been really successful for you and for other high growth ventures? What's the right time to pivot if you're not getting the results that you've been able to achieve? What advice would you provide?
Yeah, so the right time to pivot was yesterday. You always look and say, well, that's a genius idea. I should have pivoted. And what's interesting, I find, is the person who's closest to the business doesn't realize they need to pivot. I've had some discussions with some other co-founders, and they've come to me with, I'm trying this, I'm trying this, and I go, that's what your business should be. And they're like, no, this is just a small part of my business. And I'm like, no, you're missing it. That you need to pivot there. And I'm not saying I'm a genius. I'm not saying I saw something they didn't see, but they were too close to the business to realize they needed to pivot. Yeah. And then they did pivot, and it exploded, and it went well. So the pivot it's a hard one. You're always, if you're on an idea, you're determined. Yep. you want to make it work, but sometimes you need to just step back or speak to other people and say, what do you think of the idea? Is it the right time to pivot now or not? On the fail fast,
Yep.
I don't believe in failing. It's like, learning from our mistakes is one of our core values. It's inbred in everything we do. When someone makes a mistake, whether it's in IT, whether it's in the distribution center, in operations, we'll sit down, we'll have a conversation, and I'll say, what do we learn from this? Let's not make the same mistake again. Someone makes the same mistake again, they haven't learned, and we need to have a proper discussion. But you need to learn from your mistakes. I don't believe in the agile methodology of, I believe in agile methodology. I don't believe in the agile methodology of just throw something out there, it may not work, but let's just get something out there. I believe everything you put out has to work. So I don't put anything half out there and say, we'll iterate and make it better. But obviously some of the stuff you put out there fails and it doesn't work like you expect. And you need to rethink about it and learn from those mistakes and pivot or move as quickly as you can.
And we'll come back to that one, but I was interested in asking that question because I understand you also provide advice to some other organisations that you sit on advisory board roles for. Could you take us through some of those? Yeah,
sure. I'm the director of Car Next Door. So Car Next Door is a car sharing company. It's the sharing economy, not the gig economy. So you've got a car, you train into work every day, but I need a car and I possibly live near you. I can go on Car Next Door and find your car, and I can go in, there's a lockbox and I can punch in a code and take the car for a drive and pay per kilometre or per day, however we want to do that. So I sit on the board of Car Next Door. I have been in the past an advisor to Afterpay. They just, they're much bigger than needing my advice, my part-time advice right now. And Nick, one of my great mates, and he's done very well there. But and all of that comes out of me just giving my time, and I believe in that a lot, in that you learn a lot from doing these things. I actually learn a lot more from doing these things than maybe I provide. Now they tell me that's not true, and they tell me I'm providing a lot, but often I'll be sitting at the board table and they'll be explaining something they're doing in their business, and I'll be making a note, I should really look at that at Booktopia. Like, why aren't we doing that at Booktopia? So here's a small little startup, that's teaching me, ways of doing things. And, I think that's a big part of everyone's career, and for everyone out there, it's, you need to network. If you're not networking, you can't lock yourself in a cupboard and be a developer all day. You have to network. And one of those ways is offering your advice and your guidance to other people pro bono. Most of the time I'll do it for free. Car Next Door, it's exactly what happened. Went for a couple of coffees, a couple of lunches. We were having a chat, and then when they started forming a board, they came to me and said, "Would you mind being on our board?" And there's a lot of online retailers who I work with, or I've been on their advisory boards. I'm on a few charity advisory boards, and it's just about getting out there and getting out of your comfort zone sometimes, just so you can grow as an individual too.
Thank you. So let's step back when you're an engineer first. What would you consider your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
So I'll start by saying, I don't see challenges, I see it as an opportunity. And I've always said that. I say, if something's hard for you to do, it's hard for everyone else to do. And if you can nail it, if you can get it done properly, then that's a great opportunity, and it's a barrier for everyone else they have to jump over. If something's easy, well, why bother doing it? Because everyone's going to replicate it tomorrow, and you're going to be in a competition with these other people. So I don't look back and say, well, that was hard, and I look back and say, well, that was hard. Well, that was hard. It was a challenge. I look back and say, it was hard, and we got it done. It was a great opportunity.
So from those opportunities, what would you say is your biggest feat or achievement?
Well, look, it's hard to pick one. I think just going through the Booktopia story, if I think about it, to start, the number of SKUs we have to deal with. When I started at Booktopia, I didn't understand it. We were dealing with a big number of SKUs until I speak to other online retailers, 5 years later. But I land there and it's 27 million SKUs I've got to deal with. Now you talk to most businesses, they've got 100,000 and they're like, wow, well, 10,000, I've got a lot of SKUs I've got to deal with. 27 now, think about the databases, think about the search engines, think about the indexing and all the jobs and processes that run across 27 million. Of those, 6 million are only available to buy in the country. So any other bookstore, online bookstore that wants to start up can go and get data feeds from all these different suppliers. Great, there's data feeds, and put 27 million books on their website. But how do you filter those down to 6 million that are buyable? How do you make it a great customer experience? Because if you've got 27 million, the customer's going to buy, sorry, that's not available. sorry, that's just a photocopied edition of a book that you thought it was, but it's not. That's just a print-on-demand edition of something it's not. So those are the challenges we've had to overcome as a business, is sifting through that. And then the growth of the business. We've grown, I think, we were growing 30% year on year. I think it was for 10 years or 8 years, whatever it is. We just grew and grew and grew. And dealing with that growth year on year on year, was difficult. And come Christmas every year, we knew we were going to have this massive spike, and then we would sit at that level, and that would be the new norm. And then we would have to keep, and the systems behind that. We didn't have, all the tools, all the monitoring tools that we have today. We're fortunate to have a lot of monitoring tools that we've implemented over the years. But if I think back to the first Click Frenzy, whenever that was, and the Myers, the David Jones, all those websites went down, during Click Frenzy. And there we were standing, very proud of ourselves. We were still up, and I think we were selling, a book every 5 seconds or a book every 4 seconds. Today we sell a book every 4 seconds, but 24/7, 365. So sometimes we're selling more than a book a second. But we were very proud of ourselves, and we were watching the site, no monitoring, and it was slowing down, and we were, we were looking at those kind of things, and how do we deal with those challenges, those traffic surges, and all of those. So a lot of challenges along the way. I think one of the other big challenges we've had being, everything's built in-house at Booktopia. And with that comes the demands of the business, especially when someone new comes into the business. So you have a new distribution center manager come in, and they've used this, $1 million system that's, it's got all the bells and whistles and everything you need, and they've come and you build your own system. Okay, what am I going to use here? Like, is it off the shelf? And the frustration they have because it doesn't have those bells and whistles, but 6 months down the line, they're like, man, this is so much more efficient. This is so much better. This is so much better for the customer. Everything we do at Booktopia is for the customer. And when we were automating our warehouse, we got a consultant in. And so he came in and he looked at everything. He said, all right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to replace your warehouse management system with an off-the-shelf system. Okay, cool. So let's do a gap analysis, and let's compare the two systems and see what we got. And he went and did that, and he came back and goes, all right, we're going to keep your system. All right, we're going to make these few tweaks, but it's working very well. And so getting over that, the frustrations maybe sometimes in the business is a challenge. Sometimes the business are frustrated that, but in my old job, I had the system that could do this. Yeah, but could your system do these 7 other things? And what was the customer experience? And so that's probably one of the biggest challenges with a self-built system. And a lot of people shy away from building their own systems for that reason. They don't want the responsibility. They don't want the pressure on them when it doesn't match up to those multi-million-dollar systems that are out there.
And if you look at your career then, Wayne, you've had almost a linear engineer, grew with the business all the way through to now obviously being deputy CEO. What advice would you give to engineers today when they may be struggling with getting requirements from the business, or they may be getting 1,000 different priorities thrown at them from different business lines or different teams? How have you dealt with that?
I still struggle with that today, I think it's about understanding the business at first. You've got to understand the products that you're working on. If you don't understand the products you're working on, then you're just going to take orders. If someone tells you something, you're going to say yes, and you're going to implement it. If you understand the product, you can actually then suggest better ways to do things. As an engineer, as a developer, the capabilities of what you can do, of what you can offer. They don't know that. They just know what they currently do, and they probably know one iteration from that, and then that's what they ask for. But if you know the full capabilities, you can say, well, you're just asking me to automate that, but we could actually automate the whole feature set, or we could do this, or we could do that. But if you don't know the business, and if you don't know the product you're working on, then you're never going to be able to offer that advice and that instinct. And you will always, be that developer who just, takes orders and implements. So it's about understanding what you're working on, understand who you're working with, and understanding the wider business that you're working in. And also going out there, and I said before, understanding other businesses, networking, understanding what others are doing, not just knowing what your product does, but getting ideas from other people and other similar, pieces of software if you're an engineer, and that you can make suggestions and provide further insight to the business.
And I heard somewhere that you would pretty much know every process across your business and system. To those of our audience that may not know that for their respective businesses or organisations, what one piece of advice would you give them that you haven't shared to become that trusted advisor to their business lines or their SMEs or leads of their respective other teams.
Yeah, I think like there's a fine line about wasting your time trying to learn every area of the business, and you're an engineer. Your CTO is not going to be happy with you when you're not delivering because you're trying to learn the whole business process before you start it. That's not what you want to do. You don't. You need to be executing with a good velocity. You need to be executing with good speed, but at the same time really understanding the requirements and what's. I think it's about trying to get different tasks that you can work on so you can get a well-rounded idea of it. Not trying to say, well, you've asked me to work on this, but I want to understand all of that before I get there, because you're just going to have a frustrated business and slow implementation. And I've worked with engineers who are like that. They need to know everything before they can start, and it's a bit of a problem. So it's not a go out there today and try learn every process. I'm fortunate because I built all the systems and I built all the processes, so I'm very fortunate that way. But I've got some guys in my team, and it's normally the younger guys in the team who can pick up things very quickly and then understand how they all connect. But also when they're looking at what they're working on, making sure they're working across a range of the different systems or a range of areas on the system, so that they get that well-rounded view over time. It's not going to come straight away. Don't think come into business and I need to learn everything, but make sure that you're working across it all so you can get that well-rounded.
And you're still a believer at Booktopia that you bring in external partners where it makes sense, and
yeah, where it makes sense, we definitely do. We do buy versus build on a lot of the big ticket things. Build often wins, but not always. I'm not one of those CTOs who says we will build it, we will go down, fighting for this. It's frustrating for a business when you do that. We look at some of the platforms out there and we say, should we build that ourselves? What's the IP involved? Are we giving away IP if we buy it? Is this going to be beneficial to the business going forward as a wider organization? And we also look and say, if we delivered it, what are the cost benefit of delivering it versus not? In other words, how quickly can we deliver it? If it's going to take us 6 months to deliver it, what's the cost to the business? If the business could get that feature tomorrow versus 6 months, what's the benefit going to be, or what's the loss going to be? And also, how when you deliver it, will it have all the functionality, or will it be one of those systems which kind of works but doesn't work, and the business is sitting there going, we should buy something because this is just not fulfilling our needs. So we definitely bring in other software where it makes sense. We bring in consultants where it makes sense as well. I spoke about the distribution center consultancy. For some of our SEO stuff, we bring in advisors to tell us what's happening in the market. We can't stay across everything, so you bring in specialist advice where it makes sense. But we do not go and waste money on just random advisors and consultants to tell you how to do things. Yep. We do go and learn ourselves as well, and we do make an effort of getting out there and learning ourselves.
And Booktopia seems to have always stayed pretty narrow in its focus. You sell books, and that's what you do, and you do it well.
Yeah.
Try not to get too distracted over the years.
Yeah. I think there was a stage where we started getting distracted. I think it was when the A to Z company started discussing that they were coming to Australia. I think it was around 2016 or thereabouts, maybe somewhere there. We were looking at things like games. We were looking at different ranges, and we started researching. If Amazon did come, because it was just murmurs at the time. Yeah. How have other book companies, how have other companies been successful in other markets? Where Amazon is, pretty big. And we looked at Germany, we looked at Canada. Some of them, we obviously looked at America. And those companies stuck to their niche. They stuck to their knitting. They had their niche and they stuck to their knitting, and they did what they were good at, and they offered that experience to the customers that was, unique to that product line that they offered. And we do author interviews, we do signed copies, we do all these things that Amazon's just won't offer. They're not going to do it. Books to them, they started in books, and everyone thinks of them in books. It's something like 5% of their business today. They're not there. Their mission is not to be the best book retailer on the planet. It's to sell everything to everyone. Yeah. So why try fight them, at selling everything to everyone? Because you're probably not going to have the pockets that they have. But if you keep that specialty, if you are that book retailer, and that everyone trusts and looks at, as the Australian book retailer who I can buy from, that's where we've, attributed our growth to. But always keeping the customer at the center of that discussion. Another one of our core values is customer obsession. we're obsessed about our customer, and every decision we make in the business, we will stop and say, what's the best thing for the customer? It could be the packaging we use. It could be that we're putting something in our, in our slips in our packaging. It could be how we're treating the books, how we're storing the books. What emails are we sending? What does the website look like? Every single decision we make is what is the best thing for our customer. And that's, been good for us, and we've grown, with that.
So how you prioritise work and decide which features, functions to continue on with? I read a piece from you that you at one stage were turning over $100 million, and there was an icon essentially that you did a lot of testing around, or you wanted to test to see what it would do, and a 2% increase represented another $2 million in turnover. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, sure. So that's A/B testing. So that's my golden subject, which I can talk for days on. A/B testing and conversion rate optimization. So for a website, just the 101 very quickly, you have a conversion rate percentage. That's the number of customers that come. How many of them actually do whatever you wanted them to do? Now, in our case, it's buy. In other people's website, it might be click a button. In other websites, it may be view the real estate photos. I don't know, but that's your conversion rate. That's what you live and die by, because that's what you want done. And if you can increase that conversion rate on your business, it's got, and even small conversion rate increases are substantial. And so the example you give, and let's just say a $100 million business, let's say a $10 million business, everyone needs to think in their heads what their business size is. If you can increase your conversion rate by 1%, and that's not going from 2% to 3%, that's going from 2% to 2.02%. That's 1% of your conversion rate. In a $100 million business, that's $1 million. Yeah, so it's a very 0.02% change, or sorry, increase is $1 million to a $100 million business. So with that in mind, we A/B test everything. A/B test, you serve up 2 versions to the customer at the same time under the same conditions. The only thing that's different is what you're testing. And you measure, what is the likenesses of whatever that key success metric is. So the example you're talking to is we have the Telstra logos at the top of our website. We were lucky enough to win the Telstra Business Awards, as well as the BRW Fast 100 we were in for a number of years. So, very reputable companies, Telstra and BRW. And so the thought is, well, I'll start from the very beginning. I had a graphic designer who came to me and said, search is very important in books. You've got 6 million books, it's very important, but your header's too cluttered. Now we need to declutter the header. So let's just get rid of those icons. They're serving no purpose. And those 2 awards, what are they doing? They're serving no purpose. And let's clean it up. And I said, all right, well, let's A/B test it. Let's let the data decide. We're a very data-driven company. And so we served up 2 versions, one without the trust icons, what we call the trust icons, and one with that. And we saw a 2% increase in conversion rate when the trust icons were there, which is a $2 million, in a $100 million business, it's a $2 million difference. And when we told the person, well, if you just made that change, that would have cost our business $2 million. They actually stopped and thought, oh, hey, hold on, maybe we need to, I always say be wary of the graphic designer. It's like every graphic designer thinks they're a UX designer, but you need to make data-driven decisions. Every decision you make needs to be data-driven. And at Booktopia, that's what we do. We test, test, test. It's not everyone should run out there and start testing their website for, is it a red button or a green button? Take things that are substantial, take things that are actually going to make a difference, and test them. And don't be biased about, don't have preconceived ideas about what the result is going to be, because then you're wasting your time and you're wasting your money. Allow the data to speak for itself.
Thank you. You mentioned 2016, and I wouldn't mind going to that time where Booktopia sought to raise $40 million for an IPO, but that deal didn't end up going ahead. What did you learn from that experience about attracting investment to grow your business?
Sure. We went through a number of investment rounds or attempts before we actually were successful in December of this year. Look, I think we did everything right. If we retrospectively look at the IPO, we did everything right. What did I learn? You need to talk about your backstory. You need to explain to the investors what you've done, but they don't really, that sets the scene. They don't really care, to be honest. They want to know, how is the money that they're going to put into the business actually going to grow the business and grow their investment. Setting the backstory, it's great because they're investing in the people, they're investing in what you can do. But it's like looking at your superannuation fund and going, well, it's done 10% year on year for the last, well, that doesn't, your future returns aren't going to be the same. So I learned that very quickly. We were very good at selling ourselves on what we've done. And when we went into this process and we were speaking to people about how we should present ourselves, like, yep, cut that story down. You can do that in a minute. You can talk about where you've come from.
Yep.
You can talk about the $20 a day story. And if you don't know the $20 a day story, go Google it. It's everywhere. How Booktopia started from $20 a day. And you actually need to talk about where you're going to invest the money, how you're going to use the money, how you're going to grow that investment. And that's what I wouldn't say I learned from the process. I learned during the process, and we did that, and we nailed that. The problem was that Amazon announced as we were going to market that they were coming to Australia. And what that made me learn is that investors will come with preconceived ideas. And the majority of those ideas you're never going to change that idea. You're never going to be able to convince the investor that they're wrong. You can only just put your argument forward. But at the end of the day, if the investor thinks that Amazon are coming and they're going to ruin retail and that's the end of retail, we had our argument, we said what we had to say. But what we learned from it at the end of the day is no matter what we said, these guys looked at it and said, it's risky. If I put my money there is a risk that Amazon's going to come and take over retail. It's quite funny because 6 months after Amazon came and our pitch was Amazon are going to come. It's going to take them a long time to get started. They're not going to target books. I could recite the whole thing to you if you want it. But it's interesting because 6 months later, I had those same investors calling me and saying, would you like to IPO again? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, Amazon did what you guys said was going to happen. So we were probably, they didn't say wrong because they'll never say they were wrong, but we should probably discuss that IPO thing again.
In between there, though, you tried crowdsourcing?
No, that was no. And then after that, so we said no to that. We said, no, I'm not going back to IPO. 6 months later, we've just spent, $3 million and, over a year, on an IPO, and you want us to turn around and do it all again? Like, that's not going to happen. We did look at crowdsourcing or crowdfunding, some investment, and I think we were ahead of our time on that. I still believe, it's a great idea. We learned from our mistakes on that. Car Next Door has raised money through crowdsourcing. Ninja Bank, one of the big success stories, who have raised a lot of money through crowdfunding. It's about changing people's mindset on crowdfunding being you're putting money in something and getting a T-shirt, or you're putting money in something and getting a first ride in the DeLorean, or the first time you can go on a hoverboard, or all these crazy ideas where it started. To today, you can invest in a company through crowdfunding, and I don't think when we were doing it, people understood that. And we saw that in the check sizes that they were writing. A lot of $500, $1,000, and I looked at it and said, even if we did 3 times your money, 5 times your money, 10 times your money, really, what are you getting back from a $500 investment in Booktopia? So the idea behind it, the premise behind it, we still believe is right. It's that get the loyalty from your customers, because if they're an owner of Booktopia, it's like a loyalty program. If you think about it, they're gonna buy from where they own, where they own the bookstore. In the end, we came short probably because people were putting much smaller amounts in than we thought. We probably should have raised our minimum, a little bit more. And we think those same people would have come on board at that higher minimum. And we ended up with thousands of people having invested little amounts. And we looked at it and said, are we going to reach the minimum? Are we not? We probably will just reach the minimum. But is it worth getting to that minimum amount and having thousands of investors now that you need to, have a town hall for every, at the end of every financial year to discuss all the problems? You waste all that money just, in 2 financial years. It's not really going to scale. So we pulled that. But through that process, we met some people, and we met, we've taken some investment on in December, and that was actually very good for us because we met people. Obviously, these guys are not going into investing in this is the valuation, this is what you're going to invest. They want to have a bit of a negotiation with you, and so for them, crowdfunding wasn't the way to put their money in. And we had those discussions, those negotiations, and it's turned out very well for us at a great time. So yeah.
Well done. So look, many businesses today are struggling to stay afloat, and book retailers are no different. The latest casualty was a Co-op bookshop, which announced it was going to voluntary administration last December. But Booktopia really has been bucking the trend. And you mentioned 30% growth year on year for now over a decade. With Australia now headed for a recession, how or what advice would you give to businesses on how they find new markets to grow and be sustainable?
Co-op bookshop, we landed up acquiring them out of administration, which is it's been very good for us as well. It's bittersweet to watch all these bookstores fail. That's not why we exist. We exist as an alternate when you don't have a bookstore. We exist when you can't get, a bookstore has 10,000 titles in it if you're lucky. We've got 150,000 in stock ready to ship. That's not an advert. That's just showing you we're playing on the long tail. We will tell you to go into your local bookstore and support your local bookstore before you come to us. That's what we want. I think, and I'm talking bookstores now, and then I'll talk more general retail. Books are recession-proof. Books are COVID-proof. Books are GFC-proof, and we've proven that. During the GFC, everyone went and bought books on how to educate themselves. Everyone was buying, all these bankers were learning new skills. They were learning, studying for new things, and so we saw a lot of non-fiction books during the GFC. During COVID, well, that's another whole story. Fiction, pregnancy books, cooking books, and then at the end, fitness books, and so it's been. We could talk about that for hours as well, and the psyche of people during that. And then recession is similar to GFC. We're seeing a lot of people upskilling themselves, or I think with job seeker, job keeper on at the moment, they're trying to waste time as well, so learn new languages. I wouldn't say that a waste of time, but it's not really going to get you your next job.
Yep.
But they're trying to educate themselves. They're trying to, use their time, wisely. So from a book perspective, it's not that the recession or the GFC, hits COVID, yes, because people can't go into stores. But I just think it's sad to watch some of these poorly run bookstores go the way they've gone. And that's in retail in general. If you're not going to offer a differentiated experience by going into the store, why is someone going into the store? We look at Co-op and our strategy with textbooks, which we've gone into in a big way. 2 years before the Co-op went into administration, it was about targeting the university students inside the campus, targeting them inside the lecture hall, because they could look up that book that their lecturer just told them about and find the book. Whereas going to the Co-op, they didn't offer any differentiated service. So to all those retailers out there, if you're just going to allow the customer to come in, find what they want, and walk out, you're no better than an online store. You're actually worse, because the online store is going to offer personalization, recommendations, all the rest of it. If you're there and if you're giving them that experience, recommending, measuring them up for their suit, trying, showing them the right shoes to wear, the right running shoes to wear, those experiences they won't get online. That's where you're going to have to really earn your sales, especially during this time when it's going to get tough in a recession.
Thank you. What does your tech roadmap look like? Where's your next source of efficiency, productivity, or customer need coming from? And I know you're sort of automating your warehouse at the moment, or you're looking to.
Yeah.
What sort of emerging tech do you think Booktopia will start to utilise more?
Today I was on the floor in our new facility. We are automating we're doing further automation with just another 3,000 square meters of facility. And we've put on 2 automated packing machines which kind of wrap the box around the book. It's really exciting, and we turned it on for the first time today, and we were processing a few lucky customers' orders through it today. But the customer need is what we look at. What is the customer need? The customer wants their products fast. They want them with certainty, and they want them fast. What I mean with certainty is like, I'll be home between 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock tonight. Can you deliver my books to me at that time? And I want my book today. Why? Because I need to study for my exam tomorrow.
Yeah.
So there's different needs, and then there's other customers like, what? It's a fiction book. Get me my book whenever I get it. No urgency for me to read, the latest or the old Harry Potter, which I've never read and I'm trying to catch up on. And so we look at the customer need, and the customer need right now is servicing your customer's promise. We're all about the promise. We will tell a customer when they'll get their book shipped from our distribution center, and we live and die by that. Our team lives in, we have a metric every single morning that we look at what percentage of orders missed the cutoff. And no order is good enough. We need to hit everything. So we're automating our facility. We've taken some of that investment, and we're automating our facility so that, we're currently doing about 30,000 units out per day. This investment will allow us to 60,000, and then with a little more, 100,000 units out of our distribution center a day. And I want to push my team to be delivering same day, shipping out of our distribution center the same day. So you order a book before midday, I want them to be able to ship it out, today, so it's in your hands tomorrow, and you're not paying any extra for that. That's standard shipping. If you want same day, today we do same day within Sydney Metro. That obviously has its challenges. So that's where our current efficiencies are going. My headspace is all distribution center, automation, and then robots. I'm excited to start looking at robots in the distribution center. The price of robots has come down significantly. 5G is allowing robots to be, pretty smart, pretty clever. The cloud, how cheap the cloud is even making that even easier. So that's where I want to look next as well and see what we can do in the distribution center with robots.
And what do you think that means for your current capability and workforce? You said that you're investing quite heavily into some new roles around BI and analytics, and you're obviously very data driven. What do you think your workforce looks like over the next few years as you look to make those changes?
Yeah, I think a massive BI team. Data scientists, we don't have a team of data scientists on now, but I foresee in the next 12 months a data scientist and many more. I think your efficiencies only come by analysing the current processes, and you can only analyse the current processes through data. Our reporting team, our two guys, they're amazing, and they've, we were just looking at all the reports they've built over the years, and there's a report request coming or a data request coming. We need to make that self-service. We need to allow the business to be able to self-serve their data requests so they can find the inefficiencies themselves and fix them up. I think with the automation, with the robots, with all that, comes a different skill set into the distribution center. And we just hired our first qualified electrician in our infrastructure team.
Right.
Yeah, and I think we're going to start hiring electrical engineers. Start bringing some of those skills in-house, not relying on third parties. So when something breaks down, we can fix it on-site straight away. Otherwise, that impacts the customer. If we can't deliver, if our system goes down, we've got redundancies, of course, but we can't process as much as we need to process, and then we miss our customer promise. So again, coming back from that customer, you look and you say, well, they're going to be electrical engineers, electricians, data scientists. There's the AI buzzwords, there's machine learning buzzwords. It's all part of that data. It's all about analysing the data and making it work. Engineers, software engineers are always going to be, there's always going to be a growing need for software engineers. And then a great marketing team. A great book team, I still believe, is going to be important. Data can tell you what has been. Data can tell you what sells well. Data can't read a book and tell you that's going to be, well, someone's going to prove me wrong now, but data can't read a book and tell me that's going to be a number one seller by an unknown author. But our book team can, and our book team can go and order 2,000 copies of an unknown author and make a book. Or they can be told by the publisher, this is going to be a great book, and they can make that decision to say, I don't believe you. And they can be right, they can be wrong. So there is still that, that human element always in our facility. And in the distribution center, there's always going to be that human element. There's always tasks that, you can't do through automation. And our workforce are loyal, they're great, and they care. And it's all about keeping them and keeping those guys engaged and on board.
Great news, sorry, you're going to be hiring more.
Yeah, of course, always, yeah.
Thank you, and we hope they're ACS members. So Wayne, I could keep speaking to you all night and asking you questions, but our audience have submitted a range of them, so let's jump over and ask you a few of them. So how fine is the line between tech and business? Can you still make it if you have strong technical skills but no business experience?
Definitely. There's a role for there's a role for everyone in that tech space. There's the person who's in product and knows very little tech, all the way to the person who's the tech person. And I think, I've got some great tech people who don't understand the business, but they are so good at what they do that they're invaluable to the business. So, there's I'm not talking about my team now, so I don't want to point out, but there's that whole DevOps space, that whole, that SRE, server reliability engineering, which used to be considered an infrastructure thing, you're just building infrastructure, but today you're actually building applications in the cloud. And you don't really need to know the business because you're taking processes and you're re-engineering them and making them more scalable and whatnot. So for sure, I'm not here saying you have to know the business, and I'm not saying you have to be on both sides. I've got some of my best guys are just tech-focused people, and they will go very far in what they do.
Thank you. Have you planned to, or will you use AI in any of your projects at Booktopia?
Yeah, AI is a great buzzword. It's a bunch of algorithms that are learning and working through. Our product recommendations engines on our website uses AI. Our picking systems, the way we pick in our distribution center, uses AI. We have shortest path algorithms and how you can pick the best. The grouping of products, so when we have 5 orders, let's say, how do we pick those? We've got 100 orders, we group them in 4s. How do we group those 4 orders together to have the most efficient pick? So some of these things are using basic AI all the way up to very complex AI. So yeah, we use it throughout our pricing algorithms, how we price products. It's not just this is the price, let's move on. The quantity we hold in stock of a product, the quantity we buy of a product. So, how long does it take for us to get that product? How quickly is it selling? Where's that person located? Where's that supplier located? How much stock do they currently have? You know, all of those things go into a mix, and it's some algorithms that are working out how much to buy and how much to hold. So AI everywhere, you know, algorithms everywhere. It runs the business. It is, and yeah, it's important, very important.
Thank you. Question from a recent IT graduate. What do you foresee as being essential technical skills for the future?
So yeah, I thought, what do I want my kids to do? This is sometimes the question I think about. My kids are quite a way off, so this person's probably much closer to doing this than my kids. I think you've got to be open to new languages, open to new technologies. I think you've got to understand the cloud. You have to understand the cloud, and don't pick one, learn one, but then learn another. You know, whether it's AWS, whether it's Google, you know, they've all got their pros, they've all got their cons. But if you're an engineer today and you don't understand what a Lambda function is, or if you don't understand how, you know, how the cloud works and you know, all of these kind of things, I think you're at a disadvantage to a lot of other people out there. And be open to the new languages. Don't just go for Java and .NETs and you know all of those, you know, PHPs. They're all great languages. They all have great foundations, and you probably learnt them at university. But you know, look at some of these other things. Look at some of, you know, look at Groovy. Look at, you know, I could just name them. Look at React. Look at, you know, there's all great languages out there, and you pick one or two, specialize in them. You know, understand them, but be open to learn new things. Don't just lock yourself in your specialty, because the world will run away.
Cheers. You mentioned how you introduced automation in the warehouse management at Booktopia. What were the impacts on the company's culture? Was there any fear of embracing automation?
Definitely, and it was a whole part of our project, was to bring the staff along with us on the journey. You can't just walk in and go, guess what, everyone, this is the new automation, because everyone's first thing is, that's going to replace my job, or who moved my cheese? I love that book. You know, you see that every day. It's like, no, we used to do it this way. Well, you don't do it that way now. This is the new way. It's more efficient. Oh, does that mean I'm going to lose my job? You know, so we brought them along the whole way. When we first brought automation in, we actually moved from Lane Cove in Sydney to Homebush, and it was about, we took buses of our team out there to see the facility, to see it getting built, to explain it to them. We took them through the plans. We explained to them, you know, what it means. We explained to them that it's going to make their jobs easier. It's going to mean we don't have to, you know, do this, we don't have to do that. We're going to have less exceptions. And it's going to make their job easier, but they're going to retain their job. It's exactly what we're doing right now. We're going through our information sessions, explaining to people that their job, you know, is safe, understanding that the automation that we're putting in right now is to make us be able to do more, to service the customer quicker, to sell more, you know, so that the company can grow, not to become more efficient, to stay the same, to ship the same number of products with less people. You know, there's a big difference there. And so getting them along the journey, and you can't just say it once, you know, you've got to say it multiple times to reassure those people. That's exactly what's happening.
Thank you. What are the businesses that you've used as inspiration over the years based on the culture or their operations?
Very interesting. You know, like you look at Google's, you look at Amazon's, you look at those guys, and I think I fear they go too far. I was offered a job at Google in the States partway through my Booktopia career. I did some work with Google. We launched ebooks with Google. We were the first partner, one of the first partners to launch it, and one of their senior people saw the work I did and work out, and they, you know, have you ever thought of leaving Booktopia? And to me, I think, you know, they try to sell you that dream. You know, you've got food, you've got PlayStations, you've got all of this stuff. But then when you walk into their office, no one's on the PlayStations. No one's, you know, everyone gets their lunch. Well, you know, how much does lunch cost you a day? You know, you can bring your own lunch if you want. It's not really a perk, let's be honest. They're all working really hard. They're all working long hours, but they're a small person in a big organization. And so you often see those companies will breed really good talent, and then they'll go on and start up something themselves because they want to have that impact, you know, on organizations. So in a sense, I use that to not do that. I'm a big believer in allowing our staff to grow, and I give research days out to my staff once a month. You know, in the R&D team, you can go and research anything you want, learn about anything you want. So for a day, every 2 months, we come together as an R&D team. We bring some of the business. We do an innovation day. So we take a business, we take something in the business. Someone suggests a technology that we want to learn, or a thing we want to learn. So it could be an AWS service. It could be a language. It could just be a concept. And we go away and in teams, they all build something around that concept and around that technology. So this is what I've done in my organization. I can't say there's any organizations I've copied to get that. I'm sure there's other organizations that do it. But I think some of those organizations have some really good things in bite sizes, but my staff don't get lunch. We take them out for lunches, but we don't have a chef on site, and we don't have we've got a table tennis table, which is a little net strung up across. They actually enjoy that more than a big table tennis table. So we're fun. We've got a great culture in the organisation. We've worked at it. It's been a work in progress, and I could talk about coming from a startup, and I won't. But a startup into what we are today, culture. There's a massive culture shift that journey you need to go on. But unfortunately, I can't name a particular company and say that's the golden child.
There's a lighthouse. Yeah. Thank you. So as a senior person, do you value certifications or work experience when you're hiring your team?
Work experience, definitely. Certification, sometimes. Often I'll look at someone's resume, and I'm very quick to look at resumes because I'd rather talk to the person. I do 10-minute phone chats with most of the candidates that get through to me. That's my guide. The resume you can say what you want. A lot of engineers, unfortunately, don't sell themselves well enough on the resume as well. So I'll read a resume and go, I think this person's better than they're selling themselves, so I want to talk to them. So it's actually the reverse of what some people do. Is like, I think they're selling themselves too hard. Certifications are good, but I prefer experience. I'll often get resumes that tell me they've done all the Java certifications, and I look at it and go, so what? Have you used it? What have you done with it? What have you built with it? AWS, I really value their certifications because they're very practical. But still, have you used it? What have you done with it? Because it's one thing to know how to secure an AWS environment, but have you actually done it? Have you actually logged in there and played with the console? So I actually value people who, in their own time, go away and do things. So at night I like to play with AWS, or at night I built the system, using this technology. To me, that's what I value. Someone who's ready to go out there and try something and do something new.
Great, thanks. Final question. If you had the chance to do a redo at Booktopia or through that journey, what would it be and why?
Wow. If I had the chance to do a redo, I'm not really sure, there's much I would totally redo, and that's, I'm sure there is, to be honest. I'm just thinking, I probably would have got my reporting team in a leader much earlier. We're now cleaning up, as per se. We've got, hundreds of reports that now need to be standardized. For example, what does the word revenue mean? Does it include GST? Does it exclude GST? Does it include shipping? Does it exclude shipping? There's a lot of stuff there. Our ebook strategy has been very much hit and miss along the way. We started with Google eBooks. We were the only people who were actually making money of it. Google closed it down. We then went to another company. They didn't move on. So we've actually we're now with Kobo, which is a great partner to work with. And was the offer there in the beginning? No, it wasn't. But would I have looked more into the future? I possibly would have. I wouldn't have worried about some of those games and toys that we spent our time on. But you've got to learn from those mistakes. You've got to do those things to learn from your mistakes. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to get where you are today. So in all honesty, all of those things, all of those mistakes, all of those challenges, problems, whatever you want to call them, have actually made Booktopia, I think, a better company today. And so I probably wouldn't redo any of them. Probably wouldn't have done the IPO if I'd known in hindsight what was going to happen. But who knows? And I'm sure it got us exposure that we never even thought of. So.
Well, thank you very much, Wayne, for your time tonight. We appreciate you joining us this evening, and thank you to everyone and the ACS members that have joined us for ACS's Industry Insights Leaders Series this evening. Please register for our next session with Sarah McCulloch, CIO of Essential Energy, via our website. Thank you again for joining us, and have a good evening.